In this episode of the Documentary Review Podcast, Jonathan and I look back on the 10 years we spent apprenticing before we were allowed to touch the podcasting microphones as we review the 2011 documentary Jiro Dreams of Sushi. That one was a bit of a stretch. Welcome to the Documentary Review Podcast. My name is PT.
And I'm Jonathan. Glad you're with us.
I too am glad you're with us. I didn't mean to not say I'm glad you're with us. I'm glad you're all with us. How's it going this week, Jonathan?
Good. It's a great week. Ready to talk about some sushi, and in honor of sushi, I ate in a pretty darn good sushi restaurant today.
Nice.
In downtown Denver. So yeah, if anybody's in the mood for good sushi in the Denver metro area in the great state of Colorado, hit up Dobo Sushi on Blake. Yeah.
All right, I will add that to my to-do list next time I'm in town. So it's our 5th episode. Do you feel like we're getting into the groove?
I think we're hitting it. I'm a little excited about today because this is the first. I felt kind of like I was being a little wussy on the reviews because so far I've loved every documentary we've done. I did not love tonight's documentary, but we'll get into that.
Okay, all right. I like where this is going already.
All right.
All right, so do you want to give us your usual little introductory summary of what this doc is about?
You betcha. Good old Jiro is a chef in Japan. He has been working as a sushi chef for his entire life. He's currently 85 years old. He's virtually done nothing but prepare sushi for his life, more or less. The story basically follows around his very small but very successful restaurant. He's an award-winning chef, essentially regarded as the best sushi chef on planet Earth. And it touches on things like the relationships he has with his grown sons, who are, kind of heirs or to take over the business, and kind of goes into what it takes to make the best sushi in the world. I mean, it's really a pretty straightforward documentary. One man, one mission.
Nice. One man, one mission. I like it. That was a good summary. So the documentary, I'm always interested in documentaries, how they open, because I think that's probably something the filmmaker puts a lot of thought into, I would think. If I were a filmmaker, that's what I would do anyway. I'd be like, what is the first image these people are going to see? And in this documentary, I thought very appropriately, the opening image was Jiro walking into his restaurant and turning on his lights, which was really appropriate because it's almost like as we learned throughout the documentary, he's so obsessed that like his life basically doesn't exist outside of the restaurant. So I thought that was a great way to set the stage at the beginning. It's like the movie doesn't exist till that he comes in and turns on the lights, just like his life basically doesn't exist outside of the restaurant. So I thought that was a great little opening shot.
It was. I think they did it. I think the filmmaking, the director, who's David Gleb, did a stellar job with a lot of different aspects, a lot of great, beautiful shots. I mean, like you wouldn't think you could get a beautiful shot of a piece of food on a plate, but he did numerous times throughout the thing. And then also, like Jiro, one of the things he does is like his whole philosophy behind life is just do the exact same thing every single day, but just try and do it slightly better. And I think and obviously that's a really boring thing to do, to shoot something over and over and over again, especially when it's the same. But he does a lot of great shots of him doing his daily routines, his little rituals, his trip down the subway, his trip up and down the same escalators. But it doesn't get boring, but it still gives you that repetitive tie-in to this is the way this man's life works, without throwing it in your face and without being boring. So that was done really well.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And from there, it goes from that turn on the lights thing. It goes right into him talking about how he like literally just dreams about sushi, and I thought that sets the stage very well for what was to come. So I don't know. There's so much to talk about in this movie. I really like what you just said about his whole thing is he just tries to do the same thing every day again and again, and that was one of the quotes I wrote down from one of his former apprentices who's in the documentary. He said, he's not really trying to be special or anything. He just does the same thing day after day, and he's gotten to be the best at it. So that was cool. But man, there's so many things to talk about around the documentary and the questions it raises around life. But I'm very interested when I hear you say you didn't really like the documentary. So, um, is that a place to start? Do you want to talk a little bit about what you didn't like about it, or do you want to hold off on that to keep it positive for now?
Let's hold off. We'll keep it positive for a little bit because I don't want to turn anybody off on it. Because I'm not. I don't. Yeah, we'll hold off on that. Then
Okay,
I'll support that later.
sounds good. So one of the really interesting things to me about this documentary is like his relationship with his sons. And you mentioned that it touches on his relationship with his grown sons, and one of whom works for him in the restaurant and is like 50 years old, and one of whom has gone off and started his own, almost like another location of the same restaurant. I'm not sure if it's another location, the same restaurant, or if it's his own restaurant in the same style, but
Yeah,
um,
I got the sense it was basically a franchise of that restaurant, if you will. Obviously, it's an independent shop, but it quite literally has the exact same layout mirrored to his father's restaurant. So yeah, I would say you have to consider it. I think he owns it. It's an independent thing, but it's definitely a branch of his father's restaurant. And that's the younger son, because in Japan, the older son is the heir to the business, and so since he couldn't become, there's only one heir, only one guy can take over. So oldest son gets to hang out until Jiro eventually retires. The other guy started his own uh, restaurant. So
right.
sorry to interrupt, but
No, no, that's a good point. So let me ask you, Jonathan, because we are both men in our mid 30s. Can you imagine, like right now, working for your father, and your father is your boss? Can you like even imagine that?
no, well, no, in absolutely not. In my specific case, there's, I mean, I love my dad. He's a great guy. We could never, ever work together in any capacity. But I mean, so no, and I certainly couldn't imagine thinking like eh, working a lifetime under my father, just waiting for him to either die or retire. Essentially, is no. That sounds terrible.
Yeah, yeah. I was thinking about that too. It's like almost impossible to imagine, like, because you got to imagine, like, especially if you start off when you're like 18 or whatever, working for your parent, like, it seems like to me, it would almost be like you'd never get out of that parent-child relationship, because I have a very different relationship with my dad than I did when I was a kid, obviously. Um, but I mean, really, that's a pretty common thing is people going to work for their family business. And this documentary kind of made me realize, wow, that would be a very different thing that I don't I don't think I'd be up for in the least.
Right. I think even though like people even there's some cultural differences too. In fact, the film is loaded with cultural differences. But there's one of them that even if you were to work for a family business, you would work as hard as you can to find your own niche, to separate yourself out. You certainly wouldn't be. I mean, these kids, it's a very much a father-son relationship. I think in most American companies, you find your own title in the company and your coworkers. I mean, they were apprentices to their dad. Their dad would say, "You're doing it wrong. Do it this way," and treat them. I mean, essentially like children. He did that to all the people, all the apprenticeship people in the restaurant. But yeah, that'd be a tough pill to swallow for such a very long time.
For a 50-year-old man, you think
For a
it would.
50-year-old man. Nope, you're
Yeah,
doing it wrong.
yeah, it's pretty crazy. Uh, so let me ask you this: what do you think of Jiro's parenting style overall?
Oh my gosh. Well, uh, I guess to each their own. I'll say that from my perspective and my cultural upbringing and my world point of view, it's a horrible, terrible. Like he's a failure as a father. I mean, like I I should say that with one caveat. So okay, so there's the standout scene in this documentary to me was when Jiro is talking about when his children were little, and he used to go into work at 5 a.m. and come home at 10 p.m. So essentially, he would go in before his children got up and come home after his children went to bed. And he tells a story of one of his children. He'd come home on a Sunday and he was sleeping on the couch, and his son ran up to his mom and said, "Mom, there's a stranger sleeping in our house." So I mean, he doesn't give the age of the child in the story, but obviously old enough to say that line to his mother. So I'll say 4 at a minimum. That guy missed out on his entire. He had zero, nothing to do with the upbringing of his small children.
True.
Uh, and he worked. I mean, that's his thing. He worked the same amount. His entire life. Still does. He's 85. He's still doing it. So he wouldn't have had any relationship with his children until they were essentially 18 or whatever, and they started working in the restaurant. Um,
That'll be now. First, let me say I agree with you. That's horrible. But to play kind of devil's advocate for a moment, that's true. But he has spent every day with his sons like since then for the last 30 years or whatever. He has had like a much closer, albeit like different relationship, but a much more close relationship than most adult fathers and sons probably have.
Agreed, and that was my caveat that I was saying in the beginning. My one little reason why I don't want to slam him too hard is so okay now his children are way adults, 50 years old. They have a tremendous amount of respect for their father, and they seem to have a somewhat healthy relationship. It's not you know again, everyone in the film, everyone in the film, the film is in Japanese and subtitled in English. So everyone that they talk to in the film lives in Japan, and that is the culture they know. But everyone holds Jiro in a very high regard. He's very respected. He's an elder. His work ethic is extremely respected by everyone. Everyone in the film just says what an amazing work ethic he has. And to me personally, I think that's a large chunk of a waste of life. To say, I mean, like I said, the one thing is he does seem happy. He has a relationship with his sons now because they work in his restaurant. But I don't know. You just spent your entire life doing one thing, just making sushi. It just seems like, man, you just missed out on so much. There's so much amazing things in life that guy couldn't even know, which is probably why he's able to be happy the way he is, because you only, if you grow up in the middle of an African jungle and you only know wood or a hut with dirt floor, then that's fine and it makes you happy. And then when you go to New York and you're like, oh my God, I love electricity and television, then it's hard to go back and be happy. This guy's know nothing else, so maybe that's how he's so content. I don't know.
Yeah, it's really a complicated question because I'm really glad that there are people like Jiro in the world who can dedicate themselves to one thing. So that's how great things, like a lot of great art gets made because of got that, if you had somebody like Ernest Hemingway, I would definitely not like to have been his kid or anything, but I'm pretty glad that he existed so I can read his books. So I think they do push things forward, be it art, be it science, whatever, that those obsessive personalities who just can concentrate on that one thing I'm glad they exist, but I also definitely would not want to be them or be related to them. So yeah, it's a little complicated, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with that statement. That I mean, I'll assume that his sushi making skills have influenced others around the world. Over the last whatever he's 80 years or 75 or years that he's been doing sushi. So I guess I'm glad for that, and I suppose I agree. Like Ernest Hemingway is a great example. There's somebody who had a horrible life, terrible life, and then ended in suicide. There's basically no real, even though it was an amazing life, and out of that he did give us some phenomenal works and kind of shape American literature. So I too am glad that he existed. But yeah.
Yeah, this documentary was very interesting for me because it's the exact Jiro is I would say exactly the opposite of the person that I am, whereas I always want to. There's so much to do in life. I always want to try different weird new things, and I get obsessed with weird little things for a few months here and there, or maybe a year here and there. I can't even imagine dedicating myself to one thing, even on a professional sense, for so long. So from that from that perspective, it was very interesting for me to watch this guy who just got a little bit better at everything day after day. Very
Not
different.
everything, one thing.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, yeah. Again, you know, that was my big cultural difference on the movie, where not only did he, I think that's kind of like the Japanese society, self-discipline is held in a very, very high regard, much more so than in America. And then that guy was the extreme self-discipline. Like, spoiler alert, that guy literally, like I was saying, he didn't know his children. All he did was go and make sushi. That's what he does. They give a million examples throughout the film about, yeah, the only time he ever took a day off is if it was a funeral or a national holiday. If he had to go to accept an award, he would come back later that night and continue to work. Here's a little dig on the old Euro or Giro, is that and I mean, maybe I just don't understand food enough and chefs enough, but I mean, like, they seem to like, so I'll start with the apprentices. So when you apprentice for this guy, you have to apprentice for 10 years in the back of the kitchen, basically like making the rice and pounding the octopus. Like, basically you don't get to do anything for 10 years except little kitchen work before you even get to touch the fish, before you get to start to actually like make the food. 10 years, that's a really long time. It's a decade just working up to being able to start the rest of it. The guy makes essentially fish on rice. I mean, I just can't believe that you couldn't train me to do that, or anyone, in a much shorter amount of time. And there's a part where their rice dealer comes in and he's like, I won't sell my rice to anyone else because only Jiro knows how to make the rice. It's like, no, I think that give me 2 days, I could probably figure out how to make the rice. I can't believe that you couldn't say, do these 10 steps in order. And I mean, it's water over rice. You boil it, you put pressure on it, you cool it off, and then you put it in another bucket. I mean, like, yeah, maybe there's a little more to it than that, but there can't be too much more to it than that. I mean, like, it just seems like it's such a simple thing to me that.
Well, I don't know. There must be more to it. I don't know what that more is, but
no, they go back through, even like one of his apprentice. They interview, and he's like, and Yuro himself and his son, they're all like, well, we don't really do anything, different or interesting. Basically, we just do it really consistently. They fine-tune their technique, and they just do it the exact same way. That was like the big secret, if there was a secret at all.
All right.
And then plus the other thing is they use like amazing. They like a big thing is they go out and they get the best fish and the best seafood, and they scour the Japanese fish market and they only take the very best stuff, and they get the best rice and all that. And I wondered today, as I was eating sushi in a decent restaurant today, which was very good, by the way, if this guy, instead of being in Denver, where obviously they shipped the fish in from a great distance and was not caught fresh this morning, if that guy had the exact same ingredients as Jiro is, would it taste virtually exactly the same?
Well, I think the where the artistry comes in especially in sushi is that each piece of fish is a little bit different, so there's not like a exact 10-step process. They want to get it to taste exactly the same every time, and each piece of fish is a little different, so they have to slightly, adjust things, do a little more, whatever, change things a little bit to get it to taste exactly the same. And I think that's what they're talked a lot about, the palate and his constant tasting and constantly, adjusting things to get it to that consistent place. So I think that's where the artistry comes in.
All right. Just curious. I mean, again, obviously, like, people that know about food, I'm not one of them, hold this guy in high esteem, so there's something there. But, that was one of those things, too. You know what else supported my thought of it's not that big of a deal? Like, maybe this training process could be much quicker. So there's a scene where they actually show, like, in his whopping 10-seat restaurant, 10 people sitting down there eating, and they're going through the dishes and all that stuff. And at the end, they have like a little Q&A, if you will, with Jiro, and they're like, "Ooh, did you see that he made smaller portion sizes for the women than the men so that everyone could keep pace and eat it at the same time?" And everybody's like, "Ooh, oh my gosh, how did you do that?" Like, well, I'm pretty sure he cut the pieces smaller. I'm not calling me unimpressed here. And then they're like, "Yeah, what were some of the other things they did?" Oh, then they were
Just
like,
like
"Well, how?"
if they're left-handed, they would like the next piece he'd put on their left side or whatever stuff.
Right. Whoa. I mean, like, I guess thanks for paying slight attention. And then, like, yeah, and then they were like, "Ooh, that must be difficult to do the piece size because people just sit in random places." And they're like, "Well," and then the one guy's like, "Well, we memorized the seating chart like right away. So there's just 10 seats in the restaurant. You can see them from any vantage point in the restaurant. Yeah, good job. I'm pretty sure I can put this together." Like, oh.
Nice.
So yeah. By the way, case anyway, so those were some of the things in the I wasn't that impressed with the documentary. Like,
But those aren't really criticisms of the documentary. Those are
no,
criticisms of Jiro.
right, right. And then to break down like my real criticisms of the documentary itself was one, to me personally, it didn't hold my interest. I think this could have been cut in half for the actual like playtime on it for me personally. Like, you know, there was a lot of just long shots of sushi and of kind of the same concept being beaten to death of, yep, here we are, we're still standing around in our little super tiny restaurant, and there's some huge, like, I bet you 50% of that of the movie had no dialogue in it. You know what I mean? Like, if you actually like timed out when is there actually advancements or information being relayed. Not that there weren't some beautiful shots, and not that you don't need them, but 50% of the movie was good shots and silence. Some background music.
Right.
And then plus they threw in, like, there was a whole scene in the fish market. I mean, like, granted, they needed to include that he got the best stuff, but like they follow around the tuna dealer for a while, and he's like at auction, and there's nothing really going on. I'm like, wow, this is like a solid 5 minutes of screen time that is just filler, because it's really hard to fill up an hour and a half about a dude that didn't do anything with his life but this one thing.
No, that's interesting. I can definitely see where you're coming from on that. Like, they basically, like, in the first 5 minutes give you like the pieces of the movie, and you could stop watching there and you get it. I mean, the rest of the movie is just them showing examples of, yeah, this guy's really dedicated his life to sushi, hasn't he? In like a bunch of different ways. But like for all like the parts without dialogue, the nice shots and the music, I totally liked that stuff. I thought that was good. That totally held my interest. The one kind of misstep maybe that I found was like at the end, where I felt like, okay, maybe they are stretching this out a little bit, is like at the end, out of nowhere, when the son just starts talking about how, like, the ecological issues, like he starts talking about how the the tuna isn't as big as it used to be and stuff like that, which granted is totally something worthy of talking about, but it was just like out of nowhere and so like disconnected from the rest of the documentary that I was like, this is kind of, it seems like they're stretching it a little bit with this.
Yeah, yeah, agreed. Yeah, there were a couple moments throughout the film like that where I was like, yeah, I mean, like, it just, and that was another one of them. Even though that was actually one of the more like thought-provoking moments in the film, because like, that just really interests me. But again, that's for a whole nother documentary. I mean, they can make a film based on that, and they have many. But yeah, so.
One of my favorite little moments was which again may have just been filler. I'm not sure why they even did this, but I actually did like it a lot. Was when he went back to like his hometown or whatever and saw like his old high school friends, and the great, I guess it wasn't high school friends because I don't think he like got left the house when he was like 9 or something, so he probably didn't go to high school. But when he went back to his hometown and like he saw his old friends, and they all of a sudden when they saw each other, they were all like, "We're still alive, yeah!" And they went up and like hugged each other. They were like all so happy that they were all still alive. I was like, I can't wait till I'm 85 and can I'll go see Jonathan and be like, "Yeah, we're still alive, woohoo!"
Yeah, rock on. Well, that's cool. Actually, one of the funny moments of that whole scene, because again, it was a stretch to make such a movie about just sushi, and granted he was the subject, and there wasn't much to him outside of sushi, so they did go back and hit him back in his hometown. But when he goes back to his parents' grave, that was like one of the most like I just thought that moment was so interesting because he's with his eldest son, and they're in front of his parents' grave, and he was thrown out of the house, or it sounds like thrown out when he was 9 years old.
Yeah.
And so, which I mean, I guess is why he's such a hard-nosed kind of guy. But his son's like taking kind of like doing a ritual at the grave. He's putting water on the stones and everything, and Jiro basically is like, yeah, I don't know why we're even doing this. They never did anything for me. Like, it's totally funny because like obviously I can see his point. Yeah, they kicked you out of the house when you're 9. You had to take care of yourself. It's pretty crappy, but it was funny to see like the horrified look of his eldest son. Like, oh my God, you can't talk about your ancestors like that, especially when you're here in front of them. I just thought that was a really, really cute moment in the film. But
yeah, and I mean, you kind of gotta respect Jiro for like going from like the kid who was like thrown out on the street when he was 9 to like getting his first job or whatever and all that stuff, and just like totally dedicating himself to that one thing and making himself world class at that one thing. Again, not something that I would like to do. Sounds like a horrible life, but I mean, like if you're in that mindset of, oh crap, I'm 9 years old and I'm on the street, I want to never have this situation again. I can see, coming from that mindset to being like, I got to learn to be the best at this one thing and all that. I can kind of see where he came from on that, and I can definitely respect, where he came from and where he is now. It's quite the journey.
Sure, absolutely. And I thought that was again, it seems like through time and history that a lot of extremely successful people have come from really harsh beginnings. Like to me that would be a great case study anyway. Is it because I mean, partially, if you have no one else that cares about you and you don't care about anyone else, why wouldn't you dedicate yourself to something? You know what I mean? Like, if your only definition of success is success in essentially business in your profession, whatever that may be, everything else is a distraction, especially like family and friends and things that most people truly value in their life, and where they're like, oh, well, why do I care so much about work? I have these other things that are so much better than it. But if you don't have that, yeah, why not dedicate yourself all day, every day to whatever?
Right. Another like weird thing about the documentary to me was that, unless I missed it and tell me if I did, I don't think they ever like said like what happened to his wife or anything like.
Never mentioned her. Well, I shouldn't say never mentioned her. They mentioned her once, that he was married and she took care of the kids.
Yep.
I don't know if she died. I don't know if she's still alive. I assume she's not still alive. I don't know.
Yeah, I think she would have.
Somebody would have.
The movie.
Right. At least the mention, like, yeah, mom's back at home. Nothing. So yeah, we don't know what happened to her. Maybe Jiro doesn't. Maybe he hasn't. He hadn't seen her in 20 years. He just kind of assumed she's still at home. I don't know.
Could be. Interesting.
Here's a question for you. Would you eat at his restaurant? Keep him, would you, including all the logistical issues that would come with going to eat there, would it be something you would put on your bucket list or something you would do to go and eat in his restaurant?
Not something I would put on my bucket list and necessarily like make a special trip to do. But if like I found out today that oh, Tyler, in 2 months you're gonna take a business trip to Tokyo, yeah, I would definitely consider it. I wouldn't go there for that purpose, but if I was going to be in that town and I had enough time to make the 1 month reservation or whatever, yeah, I'd
Right.
do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I would too. I think like the only, I mean, especially now that you've seen the documentary and everybody kind of knows who he is and everything like that. I would be curious to see if it's just like is mind-blowingly good. But one thing about his restaurant that I think is again another cultural difference that really stood out to me is so as Tyler just mentioned, it's about at least a minimum of a 1 month lead time on the reservation to get into the restaurant. Um, it costs a minimum of 30,000 yen. In case anybody's curious about conversion rates, that's about $255 US as of today, which is not that's expensive, but in a nice restaurant. But the kicker, the big cultural difference is it takes about 15 minutes to eat there. You sit down, he places all the sushi in front of you. You're supposed to eat it immediately because it is to get the best flavor and taste. You need to eat it right away so that the temperatures and rice and everything is correct. But yeah, you're in and out of there in 15 minutes, like less time than I would probably spend eating at Wendy's. And that would not fly in America. You know what I mean? Especially if you're going to go out for a special meal, you want to sit down, you want to have some drinks with your friends, you enjoy the atmosphere, and then you want to enjoy the food. And it's an experience that is not solely on the food. You know what I mean? So I don't know. At least I just wanted that was one of those things that stood out in the documentary to me. Like, man, it just
Yeah, no, well, I think that it could potentially fly in the U.S. if that was like the thing. Like, I didn't get the sense that that's the standard of most Japanese restaurants or anything. I think that's just like
yeah,
the
I
way
think you're
they do
right.
things there.
Yeah.
So I think it could possibly fly in the U.S. if like that was the thing that and everybody's like, oh man, you got to go try this crazy restaurant where here's how it goes at this restaurant. It could
Yes,
potentially work.
maybe. Yeah.
Definitely not standard or anything, but
Yeah, it's that one little super, super, super microscopic niche.
yeah.
Maybe.
Well, I mean, it's like there's restaurants where the waiters yell at you and stuff like that. There's all kinds of weird little niche restaurants that can work.
Yeah, but charging an obscene amount of money for like a speed eating, I don't know.
Right. I was impressed with their like with their shoving the whole piece of sushi into the mouth kind of thing. Even like they showed like one pretty petite woman who's like shoving the entire piece of sushi in her mouth. I was like, man, well done.
Yeah, I would rather just eat half of it in one bite and half of the other, but sure. Mighty
I
impressive.
don't think you're supposed to with sushi. You're supposed to
I
get
think
all
you're
the
right. I
all the
don't.
flavor.
Like I said, I take bites. I don't know. That just seems crazy.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Um,
I do find like the one thing that's really comforting to me about the restaurant is like I have a lot of, especially when I go into a cuisine that I'm not like super familiar with. I do eat like a fair amount of sushi. Like every couple weeks, I go to a sushi place, and I have my couple things that I order. So that I've over time come to be comfortable with. But I do like in his restaurant that you just go there and what you're having is what they serve you that day. You're just, you're not picking what you have. I like that aspect.
I'll give you that. That seems awesome because I mean, one, it really truly did depend on what the fresh catch of the day was. Essentially, whatever the best food in the market was, that's what they got, and that's what they prepared. I got a little mini version of that. You know, side note, I'm just a regular working father of two and all that, so we don't go out to downtown restaurants. We don't do that kind of stuff very much. Don't eat out a lot. The guy that I went to lunch with today at the sushi place, he is, you know, very well off, and so is his wife, and they have no children, so they eat out a lot, enough to the point where he knows the chefs at all the restaurants downtown. So he knew the chef at the restaurant we were at today, and so a lot of our meal, he would pick one or two things that he liked, and then he said, "Give us the best stuff. Do whatever you know what I like." That's what he'd just say to the chef. You know what I like. Give us something that you. So like we had no idea what was coming. It was great. I
Nice.
tried it. It was amazing. It was all stuff that I'd never would have ordered. So yeah, it was like I have to agree. That's a great way to eat. It's really cool. So
Very cool. Cool.
yeah.
Um, all right. Anything else you have written down or that you
I don't
want
know.
to
I was
discuss
just
in this
kind of
one?
scanning my notes. I think we covered it pretty good.
Cool.
Yeah.
Um, so let me ask you, out of 5 stars, what are you going to give this movie?
I'm gonna give it a 3.5. That's
Okay.
my rating. It was a good movie. You should see it, but there's definitely plenty of movies that are better. Or documentaries, I should say.
Okay. I give it a
You?
4. It's not my favorite that we've seen, but it definitely kept me engaged and I was interested and glad I watched it. And I watched it with my wife, and um, she's not like the biggest documentary fan. She's pretty quick to be out on a documentary if it's not up her alley. But this one she liked a lot, and she stuck with it through the whole thing. So if my wife doesn't leave in the middle, that bumps it up a half star in my book.
Gotcha. Well, cool.
Cool. All
All
right.
right. Well, you're up this week for the choices for.
Yeah. So I like to try to do a theme if I can. So the theme this week is people who make things. So I've got 3 documentaries about people making things.
I'm gonna pause just for a second in case you're a first-time listener. At the towards the end of every episode, we take turns throwing out 3 documentaries, which will be our next documentary that we watch and then review in the upcoming Tuesday. So sorry to interrupt, but now let's hear
Oh,
about 3 documentaries about people that make things.
good. That was a pro move right there. The
Thank you.
programming note. Well done. All right. The first one is Tiny, which is about kind of about the tiny house movement. And there's a dude who's trying to build a tiny house, like a couple hundred square foot house. And the second one is Print the Legend, which is about 3D printing and like the history of 3D printing and how it'll possibly affect the future and all that stuff. And the third one is Indie Game, which is about a couple people trying to make independent video games and the struggles they're going through. So there you go. Those are your 3 making stuff documentaries.
Wow. Well, good on you. You made it tough on me this week because, especially for me, because I've seen one of the 3. I've seen Print the Legend, which is a great documentary, and I really want to see both the other documentaries. Man, and all 3 are, I think, for me personally, very interesting topics.
Yeah.
Man, I'm gonna go on a ledge. I'm gonna go with Tiny because I think it's gonna bring up some really interesting issues about happiness and wealth and possessions in America. At least I hope it does.
Okay.
And those are great topics. I like thinking about them. So, and
Good
plus
deal.
I haven't
Well,
seen it. I'm up for something new.
cool. All right. Well, Tiny is on. I think the full title might be Tiny: A Story of Living Small or something along those lines. But I think if you just search for Tiny, it'll come up. Tiny is available on Netflix. So if you have a chance to watch that before next week, we're going to be recording on January 27th. Let us know your thoughts at feedback@documentaryreviewpodcast.com. Let us know your thoughts on Jiro Dreams of Sushi at that same address. And if you don't mind, head over to iTunes and plop us down a review. That'd be great. We'd love it. That's how more listeners find us. The higher our ranking, our reviews, the more iTunes pushes us to people and the more listeners we get. So we would appreciate your help. That's going to do it for us this week. I just dropped my wedding ring. And I will talk to you next time. This is PT. Keep it real.
All right, and this is Jonathan. We'll see you next week.